To truly give you the gift of freedom as you walk along the path of each daily shortcut episode, you'll discover that it's the people who you mastermind with that give you the power to transform your business. You'll take off in your business when you decide to slow down time and connect with other great mentors. When you decide to embrace fully the transformational information from one of my mentors, as we open a new door to a vehicle you can step inside and smile, taking one step and then the other. As we open a new door to a vehicle, as you walk on a stage so we can celebrate you. Pay attention to William Wood in this special episode as he shines a light on the power you have inside so you can immerse yourself in the principles of success, lift your hands in the air, and be free.
And so the question is once you identify it, and you identify something that's limiting you or holding you back, what do you do about it? And the good news is that you can change it.
Mm-hmm.
Beliefs are by their very nature generalizations. Let me explain what I mean by that. If we did not form rules and generalizations about life, we would be kind of stuck. You know, if I'm right now, I'm sitting in this nice tall black office chair.
Mm-hmm.
Now this chair looks really different than the chairs in my kitchen. So if I had to relearn the idea of chair every time I saw a chair, it would take me like forever to learn, like, where do I sit? Oh my goodness, you know, I've never been in this living room before. What are those things over there? You know,
yeah.
Well, that's called a chair. That is not a chair. It does not look like what's in my office, right? Well, right, really. So
yeah.
we are programmed to make generalizations and rules, and those rules keep us safe. Those rules help us conform to society, and they keep us out of social problems.
Mm-hmm.
But a belief is a generalization. It's a generalization about the way the world works. Let's say that a client is beaten up in high school by certain members of a different ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to point fingers one way or the other because I'm not trying to create racial tension. It was just high school stuff. You know, 3 people from one race beat up another person of another race. This kind of thing should never happen. Well, the person who's beat up then forms the generalization, the belief that all people of that race are no good, worth nothing, out to get him.
Mm-hmm.
He starts to act then very violently and defiantly and unhelpfully towards every member of that race based on his belief, which is a generalization. Now that seems like an extreme case, but isn't it also extreme to believe something like, I'm not good enough?
I mean, it's inwardly violent.
It's inwardly violent, and is it always true?
No. As a matter of fact, I would go to say that the overwhelming majority of the time it's not true.
And yet these generalizations, these beliefs end up serving like a pair of glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we decide that we're going to put those glasses on, now when I say decide, we might decide consciously, we might also make a decision at the subconscious level. It might be more in the back of our mind that decision is running. And maybe with many of these decisions, I believe we form these generalizations when we're very, very young and frankly unqualified to make the decision.
Right.
Right? I know you see this in your office, but a fair number of the major life decisions we make about our self-image will show up before the age of 9. And a fair number of them are made before the age of 7 or 6. And people will form these rules about who they are, about what's possible, about how they should behave, and then they never look at them ever again in their entire life. And it's kind of like walking around with a really old map. Imagine that you had a 50-year-old map of New York City, and then you were to go downtown and you were to try to navigate the city based on that 50-year-old map. How successful would you be?
Oh, well, modestly, but horribly.
Yeah, modestly, but horribly, right? And that's the same thing that we do. And I mean, I'm almost 40 years old. I'll turn 40 here in another couple of months. And some of the beliefs that I formed about myself, I formed when I was like 9 or 10 or 7. And I haven't updated those rules. about myself, about the way the world works, about what's possible. And I'm operating on a map that's almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
And how likely am I to be able to navigate life, finances, relationships, jobs with a 40-year-old map? Imagine if you had a 40-year-old map of technology.
Oh.
Right? Well, really, think about it.
Yeah.
It's like if you went back 40 years in time and you said to someone, I am going to send you a picture in the next 3 seconds, and they lived across the world. They'd be like, you're crazy. We're going to lock you up. Yeah, we are going to lock you up. That is impossible. You cannot send a picture across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not in maybe in 3 months or 3 weeks, but not in 3 minutes or even 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And yet today we log on to Facebook. We were doing this just right before we jumped on live, right?
Yep.
I jumped on Facebook. I shot you over a couple of website links. I shot you over, I think, a picture and some text, and it showed up in like not even seconds. It showed up in instants.
Yeah.
Right. Fractions of a second.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a 40-year-old map of technology, your map is out of date. So the good news is you can update your maps
mm-hmm.
for what's possible. You can update your maps of what's possible for you. You can update your sense of self, and you can create a new self-image.
Mm-hmm. We're not crystallized.
So then the question becomes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, Will.
I was going to say. No, Christian, you go ahead. It's okay.
I'm curtsying here.
So the question then becomes, well, how do you do it? And how do you change a limiting belief?
Mm-hmm.
I think that the hardest thing about changing a belief is first identifying it, even realizing that it's there, because because a belief ends up like a pair of sunglasses or tinted glasses, you don't even notice that the world is tinted anymore. I remember a few years back, I was downhill skiing, and I had a pair of yellow goggles on as I was skiing, and when I pulled them off my head, it was like all of a sudden there was this shock because everything looked really different. But while I had the glasses on, the whole world just kind of my brain adjusted and just kind of accepted this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way that things look. And having a belief is kind of like having those yellow tinted glasses on, like ski goggles. You're walking around with a ski mask, and you're going, guys, I am telling you, this is the way the world looks. And everybody else is like, what are you talking about? Right? They can't even see what you're seeing because they don't have the same belief filters going. Mm-hmm. So the hardest part about changing a belief is identifying that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so much easier for someone else to see and identify the belief that's there than it is for ourselves to identify that belief. Mm-hmm. I just recently had a client say, why is it so easy for me to see the problems that my friends have, but I can't see my own problems? And part of this has to do with these belief filters.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my mentors says this. He says, the hardest part about making tiger stew is catching the tiger. After that, it's just making stew. And I think that changing a belief is kind of like making tiger stew.
Wow.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard to do once you catch the tiger. And the hardest part about catching this tiger is that the whole world is being rearranged through that filter, that lens that you're looking through. Once you realize that you're wearing a pair of ski goggles, it's not that hard to take them off. It's not that hard to create some distance for it. But there's a couple of approaches that I'd like to talk about, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. But in my opinion, beliefs are generalizations that come up as a result of a decision that we make, usually if it's a limiting decision in a moment of emotional intensity. So we might say that a belief then is a decision backed by emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a decision backed by emotion. So if let's say that I am a 5-year-old kid and I'm in kindergarten, and my kindergarten teacher had a bad day because her husband yelled, and I did have a female kindergarten teacher. Let's say her husband yelled at her in the morning, and then she showed up late for work, and the principal chewed her out, and she's going through her lesson preparations, and she spills coffee all over her notes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I show up, and I'm just like an innocent little 5-year-old kid, and all of a sudden she looks at me, and this is not a true story, and she says, "You dumb kid, you're always in the way."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in that moment, like, I'm so shocked because I'm not ready to handle that I go, oh, like, I'm not good enough, or I'm in the way.
Well, and you have this authority figure, somebody who,
right.
you know, you have rendered. I mean, you assume that what they speak. Well, let me take a step back. You are going to this environment to be taught information, and whatever this individual says is doctrine. This is
right.
fact. You know, so in that moment, what you did, or what that individual did, is there's this authority figure speaking this utterance, this vile utterance of this child, because of the power differential, the authority versus, you know, the pupil. It's, oh, she said this, so therefore this is absolute truth.
Right. And so then what happens if I don't update that mental map?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if I haven't downloaded the update to my GPS and I'm still operating on a map that's 40 years old, or in this case 30, would be about 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, then I go around the rest of my life believing, oh, I'm in the way or something like that. And all of a sudden there might come an event where I go, wait a minute, where is this coming from? And I might never pin it down to the event, but I do recognize the belief because it shows up over and over and over again. It's like, I'm in the way, I'm not good enough, I'm going to step to the side, I'm not going to take the limelight, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like this belief then starts to tint every behavior that comes out of me. And this would be an example of like how a core limiting belief is formed and how it starts to impact all these other things. Well, here's the good news. In the moment that you realize that this pattern is going on, you can start to do some really simple things. Belief is a decision that's backed by emotion. Mm-hmm. So you can change a belief by changing the decision and backing it with emotion. That's a really simple little formula. Now, you can't just make a decision with no emotion, because that's not how the original decision was formed. Mm-hmm. You've got to make a new decision and back that by some emotional force. And that's one way to do it. Now, there's a bunch of other ways to do it. So one way is to work with the decision directly. In coaching or in therapy, sometimes that's called the art of reframing. Mm-hmm. And so in reframing, what we do is we look for a different kind of meaning for an event, a statement, a generalization. So, for example, if I happen to know where the memory came from, I could start to look at it and go, well, I took it to mean that I wasn't good enough, but what else could that memory mean? Well, maybe that memory meant she was having a really bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that memory just meant that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or it was a random event or whatever, or that she shouldn't have been teaching, right? Yeah, I had a teacher, not my kid. Actually, I had a great kindergarten teacher, but as far as I remember, but my my fifth grade teacher I could have lived without. I had a driver's ed teacher that looked at me in the eye and said, this is after class. I still don't even remember what prompted it. I mean, I was just a teenage kid. I was probably just being a normal teenage kid in class and frustrated him. And I remember he pulled me aside, he looked me in the eye, he poked me in the chest, and he said, you will never amount to anything. You're lazy, you're a disturbance, and your life is going nowhere. That's almost word for word what he said to me. Whoa.
Oh, goodness.
Holy cats. Now I was like, what, 16, 15,
Yeah.
16 when that happened?
Surprised you
And I
didn't
remember-
judo him.
Yeah, I was into martial arts then, I was pretty ticked. And if
Yeah.
I hadn't had a really good support network around me, I could have formed some really limiting beliefs around that. And fortunately, I didn't.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I went back and talked to my parents about it. My parents were just like, what in the world? Yeah, what? And then my dad went and talked to him, and but I could have walked away with lots of emotion there. I could have made a decision about myself. The decision I made in that moment was, this guy's an idiot, which was fortunate for me. So I didn't end up walking away with a limiting belief. I already had a pretty healthy self-image. Mm-hmm. But let's say that had impacted me. Mm-hmm. I could go back in. I could look at that memory, and I could start to reframe it by saying, well, what else could this mean? What were the motivations present? What motivated him to say that? What was his intention? Mm-hmm. What would the consequences be of holding on to that behavior? I could look at it being maybe temporarily true. I was 15, and maybe I was kind of a worthless 15-year-old, as it turns out. But 15 and a half is like totally different than 15. I was like a valuable member of society at 16. So part of this is just how many different ways can I look at this? So this isn't a show on reframing today, but I actually have a list that I'll give my clients. It's just under 20 different ways that they can look at a belief that shows up, either a statement that shows up or a memory that shows up, where they formed some sort of limiting opinion about themselves. And there's a beautiful, it's a beautiful thing that as you start to look at these events, these life events, or these beliefs in different ways, that it starts to loosen up the hold that old generalization used to have on you. You say, well, wait a minute. Like let's take the woman who says, well, I'm divorced and therefore I'm not worthy of being happy. I don't deserve happiness, I think is how she said it exactly. We go, well, wait a minute. We might look for a counterexample and go, do you know anybody that's divorced that's happy? She go, well, yeah, actually I do. I do. Have you ever had a little moment of happiness after you've had the divorce? Well, actually I have had a couple of moments that were kind of pleasant.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, okay. So maybe what you're saying is that you don't deserve happiness sometimes. But other times you do. And so what else could it mean?
Did you like today's show? If you did, ask yourself this question. Who else might benefit from the information I just learned? All it takes to change someone's life is to share the link to today's show. Will you do that? When you leave a comment below today's post, you'll automatically be entered into a contest to win a copy of the book Mindfulness, an 8-week plan for finding peace in a frantic world by Mark Williams and Danny Penman. One person who leaves a meaningful comment will win a free copy of the book Mindfulness, shipped directly to their home or business. To keep getting daily inspiration and motivation, scroll down to the bottom of the page and enter your name and best email address to subscribe to The Daily Show, which airs 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Most days, you'll hear from David Wood, my financial freedom mentor. 1 day a week, you'll hear from me. You'll also get several bonuses when you subscribe today, including a free MP3 version of my audio training, Relax. This 40-minute training will teach you how to harness the power of relaxation so that you can beat stress and live a life of peace. When you scroll down and subscribe to The Daily Show today, you'll also get a free PDF of today's message and an MP3 that you can listen to over and over again to reinforce the teachings in today's training. I look forward to seeing you again soon. My name is William Wood, and I believe in you.